Hey there, Captains. It's Reem again with another episode of Think GAR. It's Friday. I thought I would start going through the different Republic chassis and going through each different version of each different type of ship and try and give a couple of different themes or ways to run each type. And I thought I'd go chassis by chassis, so we're going to start small and work our way up. So of course we're starting with the ever fun and nimble Counselor chassis. Um, it comes in two versions. You have the Counselor class armed cruiser, 4 hull, 2 blue flak, which is really stand out on it. Command 1, Squad 1, 2 engineering. Um, for defense tokens, you have an evade, redirect, and contain. So very similar in style to a CR90, except we get a contain instead of that second evade. And then out the sides, double blue and a black out the front, and a blue and a black out the side with a blue dice out the rear. So very close range ship with decent flak, decent nav chart, and then has an officers support team, defensive retro, and ordnance slot. And it comes in at 37 points. So the first theme that I'm going to go here with this is just the support cruiser. This cruiser isn't designed to dive in and do any damage. It's designed to probably not get shot at. It wants to be out of the firing arcs of things, helping to support your fleet. And these cruisers generally are the target for carrying Mercy Mission, since they can go up to speed 4. Mercy Mission is fleet command that can be done generally with either the Venator 1 or you use the Flag Bridge to get Mercy Mission. And it says before deploying fleets, you unequip it from the ship it's assigned to and assign it to one small friendly ship that is not your flagship. And then if you get the ship that is carrying this, so in this case the Counselor, to the enemy deployment zone at the end of the game, you receive 40 extra points. And your ship is worth essentially an extra 20 points if it's destroyed. So a bit of a risk to take it, but definitely a payoff if you do get it in. So the goal here is put on the ship and support your fleet to get into the enemy end zone or deployment zone before the end of the game. So here's my loadout for like the most expensive version of this I would do. You can cut any cards that you don't want if you need to make room for points. In its simplest form, you just take this without any upgrades, and it just deploys wherever it wants and tries to get into the enemy deployment zone before the end of the game. But personally, I like taking it with Radiant 7 title in order to gain a fleet upgrade, and you lose access to the ordnance and turbo laser slot. But that way you can also put Comsnet on it, is generally what I take, or you can take any other one that you may need. And that way you're getting some value out of the 37 points base that you're spending to carry Mercy Mission. So it makes it a very expensive flotilla. I also throw Cone Captain Silver on here just to make it so that you can kind of trail along at speed 1 safely behind your fleet. And then turn 3, 4, you just go from 1 to 4 with Silver to really jump into the end zone and still be able to do tokens. If you don't have Silver, you're not going to be able to do the Comsnet as much because you're going to have to be using navs to speed up. So that is the first theme. The other theme is the expendable Counselor armed cruiser. So this, you basically just throw X-Rax on it to get a couple more black dice, and you throw it into the enemy fleet and hope that it does more damage and helps contribute to killing something that's worth more points than this. It's decent if you only have like 40 or so points left in your fleet and you don't know what to do. It can help contribute to anti-squad with the double blue fairly decently. most expensive version of this has Odigalia just to give it a little bit more survivability. Because the main weakness here is they just need 1 accuracy and like 6 damage, and you blow up. If you're in medium to close range, if the evade doesn't save you, Odigalia gives you a little bit of wiggle room if you have the extra points. It's not very common that you'll take this, but I've done it a handful of times. It's decent. It's definitely a threat that people have to deal with because the blues and blacks can really chip in over time. And if it eats a big like 10 damage shot and not your Venator, all the better. The other chassis we have to work with here is the Counselor Class Charger C70. This one has the same base stats of Command, Squadron, and Engineering. Flak changes to 1 black, so a little bit more consistent, but definitely closer range. And then you have double red out the side, red and blue out the front, and red, blue out the rear. This time with officer, support, offensive retro, and turbo laser slot. So the first theme for this is just like the long range support gunner. So most extreme cases, like most expensive build of this I would do is Clone Captain Zack, Link Turbo Laser Towers, and Swift Return. With Confire Die, you can be shooting like 4 reds out of the side. This is really good if you have like Turkin as your admiral that's passing out like Confires for like Svats. This is another good ship that can like use a concentrate fire token every round with Zack. Make it cheaper if you want by taking out Swift Return or Zack, just doing the Link Turbo Laser Towers. However you want. Even just a plain C70 can be used for Mercy Mission. It's just generally if you're in shooting range to shoot stuff, you're generally in range to be shot at, which these counselors really don't want to have done to them. They don't have a lot of staying power. The only downside of this build here, it comes in at 60 points. And 60 is the threshold for a 7-4, so if you lose just a C70, your opponent will get a 7-4 against you if you destroy nothing. So that is something to keep in mind. So cutting like the Swift Return to make it 57 points. And I should actually point out what Swift Return does. It is the other title. Swift Return is during your determined course step. If you are at distance 1 to 2 of an obstacle, you can change your speed by 1 or increase your yaw by 1. So extra maneuverability really helps with this nav chart at speed 4. It can stack with a nav dial, so these things can really turn sharp with a nav command. You can go from speed 2 to speed 4, or you can go 3 to 4 and have extra clicks from the dial and from Swift Return. It's pretty nice. Unfortunately, you don't get the benefit of like Jaina's Light, so you will be blocked by obstacles. You're shooting, you will lose dice, but you do get extra nav from them. And I guess if you really just want to have a lot of fun, you can put on engine techs and you can get really, really squirrely with this. But at this point, the ship's getting much too expensive in my opinion at like 68 points. But you would have a lot of fun doing all the extra moves. The other theme for the C70 is a little bit more difficult to come up with. I've theorized it, and it could work, but it relies on another title that isn't all that good. So we'll talk about this title first. A little bit of a spoiler for the Venator video in the future. But there's a title called Triumphant. While another friendly non-flotilla ship resolves a squadron command, up to 3 squads without Adept that it activates can be at close range of you, even if the squadrons are beyond close to medium range of that ship. Cannot happen during the first round. So this means essentially if there is a squadron within close range of the Venator that this is tied to, the ship that activates the squads can be anywhere. So with that in mind, you could have a Counselor C70 that has expanded hangar bays to get Squad 2. You can bank a token on round 1, and on turn 2, 3, whatever. If this is carrying Mercy Mission on the opposite end of the board, you could be pushing 3 squadrons with Triumphant. Problem with that is it's very tricky, finicky to try and do that. If the Venator activates first and flies away from the squads, that's a bit of a problem. It Triumphant just isn't really used, is the main problem. The other 2 titles are so much better and non-gimmicky than Triumphant that it really takes a certain mindset. You have to have, like, this has to be the main goal of your fleet to get Triumphant to work. And a lot of the times it's like, why am I just using a Venator to push 5 naturally? But that's getting into the Venator, not the Counselor. But it is potentially another use, a little niche fun effect that your opponent probably won't have seen before if you do use it, a way to push off enemy squads from across the board. And I guess interestingly enough, if you are playing Yularen and you have Mercy Mission, you don't even need the expanded hangar. You can just do a naked one. Technically, I guess you can make it a normal Counselor armed cruiser, and you could do the same sort of thing with Triumphant. But those are my thoughts on Counselors. Those are what I have used them for and theorized about potentially using them for. Let me know if there's a build that any of you have that is different than this. I love Counselors. It's just that Contain doesn't really help them a lot. So I end up not using them in combat roles for the most part. And generally, I just have this support Counselor as my standard version of it. But let me know your thoughts, and we'll move on to the next small video next week. All right, have a good one.